You're listening to Mile High Insiders with Nick Kendell and Luke Patterson. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all things Broncos. Now, it's time to find out what's going on behind the walls of UC Health Training Center.
Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just a moment here while we bring in the full extent of our Facebook community. Bear with us here one moment or two, and we're good. Welcome in, everybody, to a fresh episode of Mile High Insiders. I am your fill-in host, Chad Jensen, of course, presented by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. With me tonight, the co-host of Mile High Insiders, my friend, been with MHH now, what is this, Nick? I want to say this is year 5. It's been 4 years, so you're in year 5. Nick Kendell, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Had my second dose of the Pfizer vaccine yesterday, so on the up and up, hopefully being a part of the solution overall, and just taking it easy. I'm excited to talk some football today. Obviously, there's a little bit of FOMO with the Senior Bowl going on and up here in the upper left USA, as we say here in Seattle. But, excited to be here talking football, and glad you're joining us tonight while Luke is on his journey back to the great state of Colorado.
Always my pleasure. I appreciate the invite. While I'm thinking of it, do you remember how it was that we crossed paths? Was it on Facebook? Did I find you on Facebook? Is that how we connected?
Yeah, honestly, I think I was just commenting on Facebook. I think maybe it was even an Eric Trickle mock draft, and I was like, well, here's my thoughts on it. And I gave like a different mock or some thoughts on it. And you're like, you messaged me right after that saying, hey, do you write for anybody? And I was like, no, I'm just, getting my master's right now. Nothing really. And you're like, do you want to write for somebody? I was like, sure. So here we are. And then also I was interested in getting into the podcast kind of verbal game, here the audio game. And you were not using the Huddle Up feed anymore. And I was like, you know what? It's just going to waste. Let me do something with it. And lo and behold, we came back to it. And here we are today. Pretty darn exciting and good network here. I mean, I'm happy to be a part of it.
Serendipity is what they call it, baby. But yeah, that was that's right, because at the time, so circa early 2017, I was doing Locked On Broncos. So we had started Huddle Up podcast, myself and Luke Polglaze, the great Luke Polglaze, who eventually decided, I'm getting out of media, I'm going to go into coaching. And so now he's coaching college football. But and so we had started the Huddle Up podcast, and about 6 months into that, we got propositioned by Locked On to do Locked On Broncos, and we're like, daily? I don't know. That sounds like a lot to bite off, but we ended up doing it, and temporarily Huddle Up Pod was just kind of languishing. So what Nick's talking about is, at the time we were doing Locked On. So Nick, as soon as he came on, was like, yeah, I'd love to write, but actually what I really want to do is podcast. And by the way, what was it, like 2 weeks in, you're like, by the way, my friend Carl Dumlick, what about Carl? And Carl was writing it predominantly orange, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, 100%.
And so we brought Carl on, and we just said, hey, look, dude, you guys do Huddle Up Pod while myself and Luke Polglaze are doing Locked On. And that only lasted probably, I don't know, another month or so until we finally said, we're done with this whole Locked On thing. Peace out. We'll go devote our energies to Huddle Up. And then a couple months after that, it was Huddle Up, myself and Luke. Actually, no, by that point, Luke moved on, and it was myself and Will Keys. And you were the Huddle Up. You and Carl were the Huddle Up Pod draft podcast. That's what it was. Yep. And then we're like, hey, let's just name each show, give each show its own name, and the rest is history.
Yep, it is.
So anyway, fun little trip down memory lane. Sorry for being late tonight. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but everything has been smoothed out. We're rocking and rolling. Tonight we want to get to a few of the rumors that have been blown around Del Valle, as far as Deshaun Watson, some Matthew Stafford, some Jared Goff rumors that are going on. We're going to get to all that here in just a moment, but what we have to do first is say thank you to the presenting sponsor of tonight's live stream podcast, Manscaped. Gang, 2020, we got to put it behind us, right? It's in the books. Crappy year, quarantine, all that stuff. Put it behind you. It's 2021 now, which means it's time to embrace the new year, new me mindset. And the best way to cultivate that between the years is with Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, offering precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. And they've helped over 2 million men, including yours truly, including Nick, around the world, keep their male grooming on point. Nick, I know there's a little something for everybody when it comes to Manscaped's offering, but my favorite here is the Lawnmower 3.0.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest with you. The crop mop has probably been my favorite product by them. I've got a second batch here on the way, and I am somebody who perspirates pretty heavily, especially while I am exercising. And I'm also an avid hiker. And let me tell you, sometimes things can get a little bit funky when you're out there, working up a sweat. So the crop mop, I am really excited about it, especially how they're individually packaged as well. So taking them backpacking, taking them on the trails, taking them when you're backcountry fishing, all that. I mean, if you're hunting or anything out there, obviously you're not really trying to maybe impress, the somebody you might be attracted to when you're out there doing that. You got to do it for yourself sometimes as well. Sure. So I really am a big fan of that. Also, I mean, obviously it's quarantine, not really traveling so much, but the Manscaped travel kit here with the toenail clippers, fingernail clippers, filer, trimmer. It's got like a magnet on it as well. And I am always losing fingernail clippers. I think my wife just hides them from me, honestly. No, I'm just kidding if she's listening, but it's really great. It's all right there. And I'm a big fan of their products. Also their cologne. I sprayed it on me before I came. And man, it's a really great product. So, obviously 2020 has been very rough. But taking care of yourself, taking care of your own personal hygiene with Manscaped makes it a little bit better.
I was frankly surprised at how good the cologne was.
Yeah, again, it really is. It got the wife approval, so that's what counts.
Same here. So again, guys, the Lawnmower 3.0, the reason you want this, skin safe trimmer, all right, reducing nicks to your two best buddies. And also it's got the light to illuminate. I'll use my Huddle Up podcast partners verbiage, the undercarriage, some of those spots on the undercarriage that are hard to see. So guys, embrace that new year, new me mindset with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Your family jewels will thank you. Tell them, Nick.
Yeah, guys, get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE, again, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com if you just use the code HUDDLE. Happy New Year to you and your boys.
And your boys.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, so let's dive into some content here. Everyone's been patient. We'll get to some other matters of business here in a little bit, but John, any questions or supers, get them queued up. I just wanted to pick Nick's brain off the top here with what Woody Page reported. Let me do a quick share screen here so we can all follow along and have an illustration here. But Woody Page of the Colorado Springs Post-Gazette, I think it's called, reported yesterday, Nick, that Deshaun Watson, let me get down to this so everyone can see it. Deshaun Watson has zero interest in a potential trade to Denver, and that Woody Page also picked up somewhere along the way that Matthew Stafford wants warm weather. And I guess a lot of people who maybe not spend a lot of time in Denver don't realize that it's warm most of the time, but nevertheless, it's all rumor, right? But what was your reaction to Woody Page, who has actually been pretty reliable over the years, longtime insider in Denver?
Yeah, I do want to. I love Woody Page. Going back to his Around the Horn days, I was always pulling for Woody and his clever signs in the background that he've had. I do think, not that he doesn't have sources anymore, but it was pretty well known that he was pretty close with John Elway. And now that John Elway's kind of riding off into the sunset, maybe not totally yet, but at least his bags are packed in that direction. How much is Woody being fed the inside information? That's a question. I also think he had a clever quip in there yesterday where he said, like, my source was somebody at McDonald's or something like that, right? He might, he just could just be blowing steam. That's sometimes Woody's about that life. But, I think Watson would have some interest in Denver. The biggest thing is, in order to get Deshaun Watson to the Broncos and outbid the likes of the New York Jets or the Miami Dolphins, you're going to have to take away some of this young core that you already have. And that includes maybe trading a Noah Fant, a Jerry Jeudy, an offensive lineman, a Bradley Chubb, because you simply don't have the resources to compete with the Jets and the Dolphins as far as trade picks. You're only allowed to trade picks 3 years in the future. So the Jets would have 5 first rounders they could trade. The Dolphins would have 4 on top of the difference in value between the second and the third pick versus the 9th. So it's all that stuff is really just making it seem it'd be hard for the Broncos to have a leg up in a trade for Watson if Watson has any interest in the Jets or the Dolphins.
That's why if you're Deshaun Watson, it's like, careful what you wish for, because you might be miffed. You might be pissed off that they didn't include you in every GM and coaching decision this offseason. But any team that is going to realistically be in the hunt to land you, I mean, the king's ransom that will have to be given up, you're setting that team back. Now, I've said, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, Nick, because Zach and I, we've talked a lot about this over the last few weeks. And my overall take on Deshaun Watson is, if it's just on the surface, hey, do you want Deshaun Watson over Drew Lock? Who wouldn't, right? Who wouldn't want Deshaun Watson? But I have some serious doubts that he is the caliber of quarterback that could, even though he's got all the weapons that he could want, he would want for nothing offensively. Even the right tackle is the only thing you're not so sure about for Denver. The offensive line stepped up down the stretch. Garrett Bowles, you now have an elite left tackle. You've got the skill positions in the backfield. That's all ironed out. Yeah. But the defense, and I'm just not sure he's that caliber of quarterback quite yet on his developmental curve in the league. He's only entering 17, 18, 19, 20. This is year 5 for him.
Yeah.
Do you think he's that caliber of a quarterback that could come in and, despite some massive holes on defense or wherever it might be like Peyton Manning and be that tide that elevates all ships?
I do think he could raise all ships. You're talking about a 25-year-old quarterback that I think had more games with a passer rating over 90 this year in a loss than Brady's had in his entire career. And you won't hear anybody talk about how important the quarterback position is than me for this network. But still, it takes a team to win games. And it's just the level of dysfunction in the Texans. It's almost impossible for him to overcome the Cal McNair issues going on there and the weird kind of pull that the life coach that has the ear of the ownership right now. So I do think that Deshaun Watson would be able to raise all boats. Now, to what extent? Are we talking about a Super Bowl contender year 1? That depends on what the Broncos are giving up. That depends on how healthy they are. The defense has holes, but it's not like we're going to go into next year with the defense that we saw week 17 last year with a late third round rookie cornerback on one side and an undrafted free agent they picked up on the other side. This defense is going to get some guys back or let some guys go and be able to fill them with better players than let's just call them street free agents that they are picking up down the stretch. So I think, Deshaun Watson, if you have a chance to go get him, you got to at least call. 25-year-old quarterback. Let's just say it's you know how Madden, sometimes you can have the fantasy draft where every single player in the entire NFL is available. If there was a redraft of the entire league, like you could do in a Madden league, Deshaun Watson would be the second player off the board. I'm very confident in saying that. The only guy who would go before him is Patrick Mahomes. He's the only player in a vacuum of the entire NFL that has more value than Deshaun Watson would in the open market. So if you have a chance to go get him, you got to swing your shot. And I know that it hurts the team in the short term, maybe in the more actually 2 to 3 years down the stretch, because draft picks take time to develop. And it's not going to be like a day one issue. But that being said, you set yourself up for 10 to 15 years with a top 5 quality quarterback. You're going to have plenty of reshuffles of the deck, and you're going to have that most important piece set. So it's obviously a risk. But it's also a risk to have a good team with no quarterback.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. And by the way, Muhammad, MHH, in-house male model. Sorry, I can't show your awesome profile pic because the stream, I think it's because we were a little bit late. And of course, it's pretty active tonight. It jumped you. So we got to reverse engineer. But Muhammad, much love to you, my friend. We're looking forward to having you on the Huddle Up podcast here in, 10 days time, my friend. Good to see you and really appreciate you. All right. Let's just say, let's grab Kenneth, and then I got a question for you. By the way, Kenneth, I realized along the way today in a DM exchange I had between myself and Kenneth. Kenneth is he's a veteran. And so tip of the cap to you, my friend. We appreciate everything you've done for this great country. But superstar Kenneth, he says, people trash the Texans, but at least they're not the Rockies who paid a team $50 million to take their Hall of Fame player. Now, Nick, I know you're a big baseball guy. I used to be. Baseball, I used to love. I freaking love baseball. But I just don't have the time to follow it nowadays like I used to. I'm pretty sure you were happy with that move today, yeah?
I don't want to alienate a bunch of the listeners right now, but I am a St. Louis Cardinals fan. And I was very happy to have Matt Holliday. Obviously, we got him from the A's when that trade happened, but sent him to the Cardinals. Larry Walker is the guy that the Rockies sent to the Cardinals, and now Nolan Arenado. So we really appreciate the quadruple A team that has been the Rockies for my St. Louis Cardinals. And again, ever since I've started really doing this football content for you, I haven't watched as much baseball, but I'll be tuning in this year. Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. I'm sorry, Rockies fans. And I've been to that stadium 4 times to watch games. I love going to Coors. But, man, birds on the bat. That's where my heart is for baseball.
All right, I've got a good question for you. I'm not sure what you're saying, John. DM. Ian Garrett. Appreciate the question here, my friend, and you being with us. He says, what are your guys' thoughts on Patrick Surtain II? Also, I don't think the Broncos will get one of the big-name quarterbacks. I see them signing Ryan Fitzpatrick. I still think, in terms of what is most likely to happen. I think it's something along the lines of a Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you run it back with Drew one last year. But give us a 411 on Patrick Surtain. Is he a scheme fit as far as Vic Fangio in your mind? What are some of his strengths? What are some of his weaknesses?
I mean, if you're talking about using a top 10 pick on the cornerback, they probably need to be somewhat scheme transcendent. And I think Patrick Surtain has some of that. Now, I don't think he is an ideal scheme fit for Vic Fangio, given the click and close that Fangio wants from that cornerback position, the hip fluidity and twitch to play off man and off zone. But Patrick Surtain, you're talking about a guy who's about as safe as you can get at the cornerback position. And given the circumstances of this offseason and this draft cycle, I think there's a little extra value in a certainty with a guy like Patrick Surtain. So I definitely would lean Caleb Farley over Surtain. I think Farley is a multiple tiers better athlete, and he is more scheme diverse. There's a little bit more risk because of the 1 year playing cornerback tape, really, and also some injuries as well. But again, I'm going for a guy who hopefully has better upside and has the speed to keep up with some of those boundary weapons in the AFC West, which I do not know if Surtain has. But Surtain is very safe. So scheme fit, not scheme fit. I know Eric Tricklin and I have gone back and forth on Twitter about that. I'm not a big Patrick Surtain guy, especially if you're comparing him to Farley. But I think that if you took Surtain and how Vic Fangio has been able to manipulate his defense to give whatever guys he has, put them in the best spot to succeed, I think you could do far worse. That being said, if Surtain was the best guy left on the board, you're at 10, I think I'd be looking to trade back first instead of taking him.
Shout out to you, Broncos 2447. We do appreciate the love.
Thank you.
By the way, this is a quick plug here. Gang, make sure you are plugged in for tomorrow at noon Mountain Time on Facebook. Kelberman's Corner, episode 4, hot takes that hold water. If you're not a Facebook supporter, it's easy to do. Open up the app, find Mile High Huddle, big blue button, click that, follow it through. You're in like Flynn. We're getting started with Kelberman's Corner as far as the direct content for the Facebook supporters, but we have some big plans for that, including some draft stuff coming down the pike for our supporters. So keep an eye on that. Appreciate that. And so Zach's off tonight. You know, he's kicking it. Yeah. So anyway, let me see here. Oh, Steve Baumgartner. Good to see you, my brother. Really appreciate your support. Longtime listener, longtime superstar. Always great having Steve in the chat. He says, hey guys, who do you guys, think is more likely to be signed, an Andy Dalton or a Fitz Magic? Nick, your thoughts?
I think Andy Dalton's more likely to be signed. I think that Fitzmagic, you probably bring him in more of a last hurrah kind of guy. I think Dalton fits what Shermer likes to do a little bit more. There's a little bit more mobility with Dalton, and I think Dalton's game reflects Drew Lock much more than Fitzpatrick does. So I think Dalton is a guy. Also, there's some connection with Nick Foles. Is somebody maybe an option? You wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Alex Smith maybe came as well. So there's some names out there for the quarterback spot. Obviously, they're not ones that are really moving the needle from Drew Lock, but they raise the floor of the room and give you a little bit more certainty and leadership as well in that room.
The stream, John, just did a jump on me here. Savage Boy Kev, shout out to you, my friend, and all of our listeners on Twitch. We appreciate you being with us. He says, what about Sam Darnold? Is that a project that can be reclaimed, Nick?
Well, the thing is about Sam Darnold is he's been in a horrific situation at the Jets. Obviously, Adam Gase is a space case. The offensive line outside of Mekhi Becton has been horrible. And also the weapons have been pretty bad as well. So Sam Darnold, not been great. There are some issues that he has on tape for the Jets that he also had at USC. He could be pretty careless with the football. And there are some highlight throws, but there's also a lot of lowlights. Biggest thing he has going for him, though, is he is exceedingly young. And I do think he has the tools to be a good enough quarterback. So, I mean, that's as far as arm strength and mobility goes. He's also a year younger than Drew Lock, despite being drafted a year earlier. So, I mean, that matters as well. His football age, still got a lot of tread left on the tires. Personally, though, I think that Sam Darnold, he's going to probably get a second and a third round pick. Somebody's going to be believing that pedigree, third overall. Still, I think he's only 24 this year. Am I willing to give up a second and third round pick for a player who honestly really reflects a lot of the same questions we have for Drew Lock? I mean, obviously you're talking then about giving yourself another lottery ticket, and there's some value in that. But in comparison to a second compensation of like a second and third round pick, I just can't see them outbidding a team like the Bears or the Colts or the Redskins, who are going to be much more desperate for a quarterback like Sam Darnold than Denver will be, considering, again, Drew Lock really, really reflects Sam Darnold to date.
All right, I want to grab this from Jake Dunn on Facebook, and then I know Joshua Shadow is got a super in that I want to grab next, John, if possible. And Joshua, hey, man, every once in a blue moon, one of our super chats slips through the cracks on like a really active night. And between myself, Zach, and John, we might miss it. And I know we missed you Thursday, so we'll make it up to you. Trust on that.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
But Nick, Jake here on Facebook is saying, Matt Stafford and his wife were in Aspen, Colorado. Loved it. Said, we'll be back. Thoughts? I mean, this is just it's anecdote. You know, it's anecdotal. Look, who wouldn't want to spend time in Colorado? I mean, people travel to this fine state year round for a lot of different reasons that have nothing to do with the Denver Broncos because of just how much there is to do there in the out of doors. And it's a great place to live. I think when push comes to shove, Nick, I don't think Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Watson, or any quarterback veteran that comes on the market that has the means to choose where they might land would just completely remove Denver off its list of destinations. And I just don't see it. Now, if this was Josh McDaniels era depredations and roster holes and just complete devastation across the roster, I could understand it a little bit more. Any one of these quarterbacks saying, yeah, miss me on Denver. But I think most quarterbacks, they're smart men. I think they look at the Denver Broncos, and if they have questions, maybe they question Vic Fangio as a head coach. Maybe they question Pat Shurmur if they like or fit the scheme or whatever. But I think on its surface, who wouldn't want to play for one of the most storied franchises in NFL history, right? The Denver Broncos been to 8 Super Bowls, 3 world championships. I mean, you can look at the lists in terms of winningest teams in NFL history. Broncos are up there. So meanwhile, where are the Detroit Lions? Where are the Houston Texans of the NFL over the years? Small potatoes in relation to Denver. So I don't really listen to that. Like Woody Page, I pay attention when he does say something, and it makes me sit up in my chair a little bit more. But like, I'm not taking that to the bank in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is, and it comes down to each individual quarterback, but how much does having Patrick Mahomes in the division scare some guys off? I mean, Stafford is still a good quarterback, and if somebody is scared of coming to the AFC West because they're going to have to overcome Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, that probably says something about their competitiveness in general. But still, I mean, for the next 10, 15 years, every single season, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, they had the first time in history, 3 years in a row, hosting the AFC Championship game. They're not going away. Patrick Mahomes is 25 years old. So that's something that I would say, maybe somebody like Stafford, what do I have? 3 to 5 to 7 years left. And I have to overcome Patrick Mahomes every single year.
Right.
When I can go to San Francisco or maybe the Rams or the NFC East. I mean, gosh, it's so hard. And it really makes it hard for Denver. They're in such a weird spot. Really kind of feels like if they don't get it right here pretty soon, I mean, you could easily fall into the tracks of, what the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins were when they couldn't overcome the Patriots for 15 plus years. So it's definitely a scary spot to be. And I do think that the warm weather stuff for Stafford, overblown. It probably will come down to compensation overall. And if the Broncos are willing to part with 9 overall to bring in Stafford, but still, I don't put too much stock in he wants to go somewhere warm. Colorado's sunny 300 days a year. It's a good spot to live. If you don't want to be in the snow, guess what? Don't go outside.
I mean, seriously, pick up the phone and call Peyton Manning and ask him how often in his 4 years in Denver, the weather actually affected his product on the field. I think, honestly, the worst weather game Peyton Manning played in as a Bronco was the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 48 in freaking MetLife Stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gosh, and they didn't prepare for crowd noise that game. John Fox, what are you doing?
Yeah, no kidding.
Gosh.
Joshua Shadow, appreciate you, my friend. Really do. You've come on strong lately for Mile High Huddle, and much love to you, my dog. He says, you're talking like Denver's was the worst defense in the league. Denver's defense was pretty solid despite the injuries. A top 5 red zone defense held Mahomes to what? Both games. So the Denver Broncos, I want to say the distinction, I read the press release that we received from the team, are the first team in the Super Bowl era, I want to say, to finish back-to-back years as the number 1 red zone defense. Never been done before. Yeah. But if you look at some of the other statistics as far as Denver's finish with regard to defense, not a whole heck of much more to write home about. I can pull it up if you really want to see it, Josh. But here's the thing. If the Denver Broncos take care of business with Justin Simmons, and I think they will, because one of the things George Paton said in his hello presser a couple weeks back was, we're not in the business of letting our best players walk. And he talks about the importance of drafting and developing and all that. So even if it takes another franchise tag, I really don't see Simmons leaving in 2021. But if you tie that up and you make a few wise and, let's face it, get a little lucky too in the moves you make at cornerback, decide what to do with Shelby vis-a-vis Jarrell Casey, you bolster some of these holes just by virtue of the talent that still is on this roster. We'll see what happens with Vaughn, but you got Bradley Chubb, you got Malik Reed, who ended up leading the team in sacks. People are missing this. Like, Chubb got the Pro Bowl, but it was actually Malik Reed who led the Denver Broncos in sacks in 2020 with 8. You know, you got a couple of, if they might not blow your socks off, but they're competent starting off-ball linebackers that did not miss a game last year. If you had to run it back with Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson, there are enough pieces there. I still think the defense can be respectable. Plus Fangio's acumen there. I think the biggest thing is probably that we're missing here. We're not talking a lot about, Nick, as far as a recruiting tool. How attractive are you as a potential destination to a Matthew Stafford or to a Deshaun Watson? You hit it, and it's a little undersold that we haven't talked about it enough, is just the presence of Patrick Mahomes in the division. But also, I think there are some real questions about Vic Fangio's coaching staff.
Yeah, I feel the Broncos had the third hardest schedule this year for their defense, given how many great offenses they faced this year, and they still wound up middle of the pack statistically. And Vic Fangio, with how hit this defense was from the injury front, I mean, so much money on IR. I really think he made lemonade out of lemons. You know, he had no other choice, especially when you're as injured as they were at cornerback. Cornerback's probably the one position where once you get past those guys and your depth really starts to show, you're sunk. I mean, we kind of saw it this week with Tom Brady versus the Packers. Kevin King. Oh, he's weak. He's bad. Guess what? I'm going to throw it there every freaking time. We also saw it with Peyton Manning, especially when you have some of those more intelligent quarterbacks that can just isolate that one guy, because offense dictates where the ball is going to go. So depth really matters on defense. And they just did not have it specifically at cornerback, and also edge rusher as well once Von Miller was down. So I understand that the defense did not live up to the expectations that we'd all want. But the day that giving up yards means giving up points, you know, then I'll change my opinion. But really what matters is keeping guys out of the end zone. And as long as they can continue to do that, Vic Fangio's got a place in my book for being a good defense. Also, something that's really important here is just we need to talk about the synergy of defense and offense. I mean, with how much the offense was turning the ball over, I mean, if they didn't lead the lead in turnovers, they were darn close. I know they're the worst in turnover differential because the defense wasn't taking it away too, which is a whole different question and issue. But still, I mean, the defense had a lot of issues this year, and the fact that they were able to hold together this when they had every chance to give up with how many injuries they had, the offense struggling, the turnovers, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a testament to Vic Fangio, the scheme, and what he's been able to do to maximize positions that simply, I mean, seriously, look across the defense. Obviously very high paid, but so much of that money was on IR, just not a lot of high value guys. And it still turned out okay.
I think you're right. You're hitting on something there. My biggest concerns, we'll come back to this, but my biggest concerns with Fangio himself is simply in-game situational decisions. You know,
that's a different bag.
You know, we talked about last week. I want to say it was Thursday night. We talked about, you know, the Broncos finished 5-11, and 2 of those losses, I mean, honestly, they were wins that you left on the table thanks to Vic Fangio. Week 1, week 17. Yeah. We'll talk more about that though.
Yeah, no, his in-game management, which for a defensive guy, I don't know. He needs to have somebody in his ear that's running situations saying, hey, here's what the probability says, blah, blah, blah. Go for it here. I mean, there was some definite issues with the game script and the in-game management, clock management as well. But that's something that's also plagued a guy like Andy Reid forever. And, you know, you're not seeing people kick him out the door because what he brings scheme-wise and leadership-wise. So it's definitely a concern. But you're not bringing Vic Fangio in here to be a excellent clock manager. You're in here to have him put together one of probably the in vogue defensive scheme right now. And the guy, I mean, you're starting to see disciples of his across the league start to propagate because that match quarters teams are having a hard time with it. It's limiting the big passes. It's limiting points. I mean, we saw what Russell Wilson looked against it. Brandon Staley's now at the Chargers. Teams want to run it. And Vic Fangio, I mean, again, look at what he was dealing with down the stretch. People want to make excuses for the offense and Drew Lock. Not as much injuries there. Juwan James, obviously the interior offensive line, Cortland Sutton, but like the defense was hamstrung and they just did not give up. So, you know, I have a lot of faith. If you did want to build a good defense, granted, the team will still only go as far as how good the quarterback is, but I think you give Fangio 2 to 3 years, especially restocking the defensive cupboard, rolling over some of that money because it's a very old defense right now, probably start to reap some of that rewards. But again, making lemonade out of lemons this year.
We'll talk more about it. First, we got to say thank you to another one of our great sponsors, sportsbetting.com. Gang, if you're looking to make watching your favorite sports, including the Super Bowl that's coming up here in a little over a week, a little more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination for online gambling in Colorado. And here's why. You got sharp odds and low juice. They have their own in-house bookmakers, which means they're not a third-party provider of odds. That results in, for you, reduced juice, best prices. Plus, you get hassle-free bonuses that you roll over after one time. That means the bonus money is yours after you bet it once, as opposed to some of the other sites. I would say most sites out there making you bet that money 5 to 30 times before it's yours. And then 24/7 live customer support. It's always a real person in the United States, which is key. But the kicker is this. Right now, gang, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will double your deposit up to $300. That's $300 in free bet credits. And you got the NBA rolling, Super Bowl's coming. There's a lot to take your focus with regard to sportsbetting.com, make things a little bit more interesting. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. That is sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on up to $300 in free bet credits and really help you start 2021 off on the right foot. And real quick, Nick, before we dive back into the stream, into the chat, I just want to make sure everyone understands how to connect with us on social media. Start by following Mile High Insider's individual podcast account on Twitter at MHI_football pod. I realize now I might need to change this. We might need to change this in the near future. That's kind of I don't know. It's a little too long, right? Too whatever. But just search Mile High Insiders. For now, it's MHI_football pod. And then also the main account at Mile High Huddle. Nick Kendell at Nick Kendell MHH. Trust, he's a great Twitter follow. Spends a lot of time on there, engages with all his followers. Great topics, especially if you're into draft and football, period, the Denver Broncos. You want to follow Nick Kendell, MHH, myself at Chad and Jensen, and the producer, Buana Beast, on Twitter at John K. Also, gang, take a second when you get some time. Head on over to huddleuppod.com and get your swag on. Get yourself a Mile High Huddle trucker hat, a Mile High Insiders hat. There's shirts, there's hoodies, there's mugs, there's little something for everybody. Another way to support what we're doing here. And then again, another shout out. Make sure you head on over to Facebook to our page, Mile High Huddle. Click the big blue button and become a supporter. But if you're not in a position to do those things, it's all good. Seriously, we are just stoked to have you with us here tonight and participating in the chat, or even if you're just listening. But we do ask you to do these three things, and it's not hard to do. Number one, subscribe. Number two, like this video, guys. You have no idea how much that helps us on YouTube and Facebook. I mean, right now we have almost 400 people in this chat live. If each one of you like this video, you have no idea. I mean, you're sitting here watching it. Like the video, help us out. It has huge benefits and effects on us organically in the trying to beat the social media robots. Okay. And then the third thing is, if we're doing a good job for you on this show, share this video out there. Help us continue to grow and reach new like-minded Broncos fans just like you.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, John, I'm going to grab here real quick before my stream jumps in. Burn the Guitarist, and then I want to grab Based Gase. Appreciate you, Burn the Guitarist. It's been really great to get to know you in these chats over the last few months. My friend, welcome and thank you. He says, hey, guys, Woody did state that Peyton had no interest in Denver, too. That being said, if we can't get Watson or Stafford, just roll with Locke. All right, so I wasn't aware of that. I don't remember. That was far enough back that I don't recall Woody saying that. But, Nick, the topic of if you can't get Watson or you can't get Stafford, what to you, all right, would be the most optimal solution for the Broncos in 2021 at quarterback?
I mean, the optimal solution is they identify one of, if Drew Lock is not the guy, they identify one of Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, or Justin Fields as the guy, and they go get him, and they're set for quarterback for the next 15 years. That's the optimal solution. Now, that means that guy, they believe in him enough to give up the capital to go get him, and somebody's willing to trade down off that spot. I think that is the optimal solution. What's probably most likely is that the Broncos are going to roll with Lock this year, and we're going to see what he's made of. And they'll bring in a guy like an Andy Dalton or a Nick Foles and really just raise the floor of that room and make sure that if Lock does falter or get injured again, something that we need to talk about with Drew Lock, he's had injuries these back-to-back seasons now. I mean, that's a knock against him. You got to quantify for that. So I think that's the most likely situation. And I do think that this team right now, it's a very exceedingly young offense. But when you look at it across the board, I mean, how can you really improve the depth chart, right? I mean, right tackle, the obvious spot, but you're not replacing Graham Glasgow. And I feel like a lot of people wanted more from him, but he was pretty darn solid until he got injured. Not bad there, especially considering the issues at right tackle and Lloyd Cushenberry early on. Lloyd Cushenberry's got a lot of hype down the stretch, improved. A lot of coaches talking high about him and how much he has improved. Obviously, Dalton Reisner there, Garrett Bowles. You have great offensive weapons, tight end, wide receiver, running back. The quarterback, it comes down to how good that quarterback can be. So something that I've really picked up on this draft cycle is something called isolating the variable when it comes to the quarterback position. It's so you don't have excuses for them. You give them a system that they can run or has history of success. You give them weapons. You give them an offensive line. You isolate the variable, and then it comes down to, is that quarterback good enough or not? I think the Broncos, you could say that they did that this past season, and Drew Lock was not good enough, but it was a really weird offseason. It was an exceedingly young offense, and obviously you lost probably your best player on offense right off the bat with Cortland Sutton. So if they wanted to run it back with Drew Lock down the stretch, I think he's got the requisite arm talent and tools. Still young, still extraordinarily cheap for 2 more years. You can go that direction, but if that's the way they go, you are isolating the variable, and it comes down to just how good Drew Lock can be. And if he's not good enough, you move on.
I still think it's a slight favorite. It's not as much favored as it was the day the season ended, the 2020 season ended. But I still think Locke is the slight favorite to be that quarterback under center. But this brings up something interesting here from Base Gase, okay? For those of you who missed it, Mike Kliss of 9 News, the probably most plugged-in Broncos insider. And when I say plugged in, I mean he's the guy when the team wants to get something out there, all right, and they're trying to either give information or get something out into the NFL zeitgeist. They utilize Mike Kliss. Some people might call it he's a mouthpiece, whatever you want to call it. Mike Kliss is the guy they go to. Base Gase, appreciate the super chat. He says, thoughts on Kliss reporting Locke as the league's hottest trade commodity? Sounds like someone is trying to inflate Locke's value. Peyton, really good point, because anyone who saw Mike Kliss's tweets and article on this subject was going, wait a minute. Drew Lock, this is what gives the Broncos the edge in this quarterback trade market. Like, what planet are you on, my dog? Because as you guys know, I've been a believer in Lock. I've probably been one of his most vocal, if for lack of a better term, supporters since he arrived in Denver, even during the 2020 season. But still, I'm at least smart enough to know that right now the kid doesn't have much, if any, value on the trade market. What the Sam Hill? I do think the reason you saw that report from Mike Kliss, this is just me speculating, okay? This is not inside info. I do think it has a little something to do with the Broncos just trying to get that talking point, trying to get that storyline into the NFL at large zeitgeist.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it was earlier this week that Adam Schefter said that if Drew Lock had become available, his market value would probably be a 4th-round pick, maybe a late 3rd, but probably a 4th-round pick because you only have those 2 years of control left, and his advanced analytics and stats have been concerning, despite having weapons and a solid offensive line around him. So I definitely think that Mike Kliss was putting it out there, just kind of the Broncos trying to raise the value of Drew Lock if there was a potential trade where they brought in a Stafford or improved the room.
Quick question here from Facebook, from Rick. Appreciate the question. How about Alex Smith as a backup? As far as I know, Nick, he's still under contract 1 more year, maybe 2. Actually, let me check something real quick.
He's definitely under contract 1 more year. You're probably trading for him, and it would
2021
be
and 2022, Nick, for what it's worth, and his cap numbers are both over $23 million.
Yikes! Given what we saw this year, unless I almost called him the wrong name. The Washington football team sends over cap, then you're probably not that interested given how bad he looked down the stretch this year. I mean, he didn't even play because I brought in, who was it? Heineke was the starter for the Washington football team in the playoff game.
Mm-hmm. It's hard, man.
Yeah, I know. Just code switching. It's just that they're in my brain incorrectly. I mean, obviously Alex Smith, he's a great player and he's kind of almost like a coach on the field. And if you brought that in, obviously you're hoping that he brings some leadership and direction and accountability for the offense that this team hasn't really had on that side of the ball since Peyton Manning was there. But you're talking about giving up capital, and for a quarterback who's going to get paid more than even obtaining Matt Stafford, it's a name, but for $23 million for 2 years, that is a little bit concerning.
Cloud9 TK, thank you for that super chat, my friend. We do really appreciate it. And you're stick around, man. Make sure you connect with us on Twitter, because we like, after every single podcast on Mile High Huddle, we like to shout out and tag every single superstar. So thank you. He says, we need to take a look at Cam Newton. Broncos would have the best weapons Cam has ever had. It's the problem with bringing in a Cam Newton, in my mind, Nick, is you only bring in Cam Newton if you really are done with Drew, because Cam Newton comes with some juice. And that locker room, I don't think, if you brought in Andy Dalton, if you brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and even Alex Smith, I think that locker room for the most part could still go, look, all these guys have some proven, bona fides about them, but like, we understand you're the backup unless something changes in the competition or Drew gets hurt. You bring in Cam Newton, and it's a hard time deciphering, if you're in that locker room, which one's the alpha, because Cam Newton has fallen from grace. I'm blind to that. But he's still Cam Newton. This dude he's got juice amongst NFL players. So that would be one concern for me. And the other concern, Nick, is I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely has an issue. I think if you were bringing in Cam Newton, it's probably because of the Shula connection. Obviously, Shula was his offensive coordinator when he had his incredible first 2 years out of the gate, set rookie passing yard records that season, which then Andrew Luck proceeded to break the following season. But still, Cam Newton's been a pretty good quarterback. this comes back to some draft and quarterback philosophy in general, but Cam Newton never really got the mental acumen and some of the technique down for the quarterback position. He's still a little bit sloppy there, but he had so much arm talent and just tools, athleticism, that he wasn't able to get everything together and was able to lead a good offense because he was able to fall back on the tools and the traits. Kind of like what we saw with Josh Allen this year. Obviously things were not always perfect for Allen, but he had enough traits where he could just kind of, broken down process, I'm still going to make plays. Cam Newton's athletic ability, the arm talent has started to fade a little bit. The injuries have started to catch up, and just that other areas of the game haven't grown while the physical side has diminished. So bringing in Cam Newton, you're probably bringing him in to compete with Drew Lock, who, I don't think Drew Lock did anything this year to earn 2021. If they bring in somebody for him to compete with, then so be it. You weren't good enough this year to be the no doubt starter. That's on you. But still, it's probably not going to happen unless you think Cam Newton is a guy who is for sure going to come in. And I think the Washington football team actually is the team that has the inside track there. They have a lot of connection to Cam Newton. Their now general manager or somebody in the organization is connected there. Ron Rivera, obviously. So I think that's probably where he ends up. But I wouldn't be against it. I just want to add bolts to the chamber for the quarterback room, because right now Broncos have been swinging and missing. But if you get more swings of the bat, you got a better chance to hit.
I guess at this point, if we run it back to this time last year, that's more of a concern in terms of keeping the locker room chemistry kind of swung toward Drew as the alpha. At this point, you don't really, beggars can't be choosers in terms of, if you have a means to upgrade the position, you upgrade the position. By the way, John, real quick, Deshaun is the next closest super I have at 656. It skipped. I can't grab Willie or I Am Supreme if you have either one of those. Flash. Awesome. Willie G, good to see you, bro. Appreciate you. Still driving this Winston train competition. So, Nick, your thoughts on the idea of bringing in Jameis Winston and maybe seeing if you can't eat some dubs?
Man, hopefully he's eating more than dubs. Hopefully not crab legs, though, in Denver. But I would be interested in bringing in Winston. Again, it comes back to the same thing with Cam Newton. Drew Lock didn't do enough this year to be all in on him. He probably needs to feel a little bit of pressure on his rear end and either, rise against adversity or crumble and fade into the annals of time. That's just kind of how it is with the quarterback position. So I'm not against it at all. I think Winston also has a very high ceiling as well. Obviously the former first number one overall pick, a lot of arm talent there. It comes with a lot of turnovers, but you're going to get explosive plays down the field as well. So really comes down to how much you think Winston has grown as a person. Can he come in and be that maturity guy? Because it's still an exceedingly young offense. That quarterback's going to come in and they're going to learn a lot and follow him. So you want to make sure that he's a dude that is worth following. That's the biggest question. But I think Winston, the tools are there. The upside is there. He's worth a shot.
I Am Supreme 22. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, Raiders are trash can juice. I feel you. And emotionally, I'm right there with you in terms of, look, I guess they kind of blew it, right? Because they started off really hot in 2020. It was looking like they were going to be one of the better teams in the AFC. And then for their defense just sucked. I mean, they have a couple of pieces on defense, I guess, Nick, but overall they ended up firing their defensive coordinator. And I think that was probably the biggest Achilles heel for the Raiders, but they're not a laughingstock anymore. That offense is so gosh dang talented that it's frankly a little bit frightening. And I think, Derek Carr, who, to me, he's like what Drew Lock could, that's probably like some modicum of what Drew's ceiling would be as Drew is Derek Carr. But still, even with Derek Carr as the guy that he is, the Raiders, look, for the first time in, 6 years? I think the last time the Broncos did not split with the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken, was 2014. But either way, at least the previous 5 years, they'd split with the Raiders. They got swept by the Raiders. So I'm with you. I am Supreme 22. Anyone who grew up following the Denver Broncos considers the Raiders trash can juice in their heart of hearts, okay? But they're a team that said,
I want to go there. I want to go to that stadium. I want to go see a game in Vegas. Good, cheap flights. Could be a great time for the visiting fans.
Excuse me. We're sitting here at, at 45 minutes. We got some time here still. Deshaun Baru. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, my friend, but it's good to see you back in the stream. We appreciate the super chat. It says, can't you guys help understand how everyone expects us to have faith in a quarterback that has played so bad? All right, Nick, this is your show. This is Mile High Insider. So far be it from me to, try and stand up here and go to bat for Drew Lock. I think everyone who follows our shows and follows MHH's podcast programming knows I'm probably a little bit more optimistic on Drew, even coming out of 2020, looking at some of the outliers as far as losing Cortland, no OTAs with Shermer, no preseason with Shermer, then the injury to his throwing shoulder, then the way the NFL screwed him in Week 12 with the Saints game and the mask snafu and all that stuff. But I know you're a much more, I wouldn't say I'm glass half full and you're a glass half empty guy. I would just say you're a much more pragmatic analyst when it comes to these issues. What's your answer here for Deshaun, who's saying, I can't understand how everyone expects us to have faith in a quarterback that has played so bad, from a guy like you, Nick, who doesn't have much faith left in Drew Lock? Is there any reason for fans to continue to hold on to any kernel of faith and optimism in Drew?
I think there is reason to have faith and optimism in Drew. Now, granted, I'm a analytics kind of guy, I'm statistical analysis, I'm an epidemiologist, so I tend to trust the data, but there is reason to believe that Drew Lock still could figure it out. Now, I'm not going to say the Josh Allen thing because I think that's probably one of the worst talking points in all of Broncos country right now as far as, look at Josh Allen. Talk about a statistical anomaly. We might as well say, let's draft a 6th-round quarterback every year because he could be Brady. It's probably not happening. But that being said, Drew Lock, there's such a thing as like tools and a threshold of tools that you have to have both arm talent and athleticism, I believe, to succeed in today's NFL, especially for a young quarterback. I mean, who was the last great young pocket quarterback that was drafted early in the draft? Jared Goff's already looking at a job. This season, last year, you could say Baker Mayfield, but he's got playmaking ability. He's not a stick in the mud when things kind of break down. He can do some stuff. So you got to have some modicum of arm talent and athleticism. I think Drew Lock has both of those. I mean, if you go check out his Spark scores, he was actually a pretty darn good athlete at the combine, running around the jumps, the 3-cone, and he's got a good arm. Now, there's a lot of questions about his accuracy and the ability to see the field and get the ball to where it needs to be on time. He has the worst completion percentage over expected in the entire NFL this past year, which is they take all the throws that have ever been made to that certain part of the field and what it actually is versus or over what Drew Lock did versus what it is expected based on aggregate data. And Drew Lock is the worst in the NFL at that statistic, and he was one of the worst in college at that too. So that's a major concern. But still, the arm talent, the athleticism, the youth, and a big thing the Broncos are dealing with here with Drew Lock, he's exceedingly cheap. You're talking about $2.5 million against the cap next year or something like that. I mean, you got reason to have faith there, and it gives you a lot of flexibility as well. You're not married to him by any means, but you get a chance to see what he has, and there's enough tools there that if he does figure it out, you have a solid starting quarterback. So all of those are reason to have faith with him. I think that the extent of the quarterback that the Broncos need him to be in the AFC West with how good these offenses are. I mean, Derek Carr is a top 15 quarterback. Justin Herbert just set records for all the rookie passing records this past season. And then the best quarterback in the NFL right now who's on pace to shatter all the previous passing records. I mean, it's a tough spot to be. So it can't just be, if this was the NFC East, I would probably have a little bit more faith in Drew Lock because getting a competent, in that 15 to 25 range quarterback, that's good enough. Is it good enough in the AFC West? I don't know, but still, arm talent, athleticism, youth, cheap contract. There's plenty of reasons for the Broncos to go with. And if he hits next year, then awesome. You have a potential quarterback there.
Yeah, I just, a part of me, if the Broncos end up moving on from Drew and they go with Matt Stafford, I really don't think the Watson thing's going to happen for Denver, or a quarterback in the draft or what have you. If they just decide, look, Drew's not our starter anymore, I'm always going to wonder what could have been if he had 1 year, or I should say back-to-back years in the same playbook. Like, what could it have been if he actually had a foundation of comfort and knowledge with Pat Shurmur, 2 years? What maybe could he have been? Because I do think if you look at some of Drew, as Nick just elucidated quite well, some of his traits, both tangible and intangible, are exactly what NFL teams covet. What really, I think, caused the bloom to fall off the rose, Nick, for a lot of Broncos fans last year wasn't just the losing. Fans are definitely impatient and tired of the losing in Denver and Broncos country. That's without question. But it was the obvious, palpable signs of regression. And I would say from week 6, when he returned from the shoulder, because he played pretty solid in the Tennessee game, despite the loss, played solid. Then he gets hurt the next week in Pittsburgh. When he came back from week 6 through week 10, it was he had the one calling card was the big comeback win against the Chargers. But besides that game, and he was ugly in that game until the fourth quarter, he not only wasn't playing well, but he was looking like the quarterback, so close to the quarterback that was in those 3 preseason games he played as a rookie. Like, he looked like he had taken steps back. And in the NFL, you've really swung me on this idea, Nick, that is, the pan, the flash, it's so finite. You only have so much time with the quarterback to really decide, is this guy moving us forward or are we going backwards? It's like the old saying that if you're not growing, you're dying. The same thing can be applied to the quarterback position. And when fans saw him, not only because, this is something Zach and I talked quite a bit about on the Huddle Up podcast, for whatever Rich Scangarello might have lacked as a tactician in his 1 year as the Broncos coordinator, I think he made up for in his ability to teach and connect as a coach with Drew. Drew took massive leaps forward from that 3rd preseason game against the Niners where he injured his thumb to when we saw him again as a rookie in week 13 against the Chargers. And by the time that season ended, it was quantum leaps forward, respectively. But you never saw him make the same mistake twice. That's an absolute, but rarely did you see him go face palm. He did it again. It was, he made a mistake here. And then usually in that season, those 5 games, he found a way to clean it up. Whereas, Nick, in 2020, for that week 6 through, I'll say, week 10 period, man, it was facepalm after facepalm. And fans, again, they're just, with all the other factors combined, including the frustrations of the 5-year world of suck, they're over it.
Yeah, it's frustration. And you see Locke do great things. I come back to that Kansas City game on that first drive where he avoids a pass rusher. And that's a play that, not every quarterback can make. That's that athleticism you want to see to be a playmaker, to be a creator. The day of the point guard quarterback is gone. Mm-hmm. You need a quarterback that can get in the paint and score. And Drew Lock can do that. But then he loses his damn mind. He goes out there and throws a boneheaded throw, and you can't do that. The turnovers are unacceptable. If he was out there throwing the ball around, they're having some struggles, but he was protecting the football, that'd be fine. But the amount of throwing the ball to the other team, the fumbles, it's just, you can't live with that in the NFL, especially in today's game. With how important and how, outside of points, probably one of the highest indicators of who won and lost is the turnover differential. When your quarterback's killing you every week, giving it to the other team, you're not going to give yourself much of a line to win. And Drew Lock's just doing that. It's an argument for why Jameis Winston got replaced. It's an argument for why Sam Darnold's probably on his way out. There are flashes, but you can't put the ball in harm's way so consistently and expect to hold on to your job. So, again, if they went with Drew Lock next year, I'm going to hope for the best. I'm hoping that they are hedging their bets, though, in adding 2022 draft capital, so that way they are in position to move on. Because make no mistake, while they are dating Drew Lock, they're not married to him by any means. I think Vic Fangio would be quite relieved to bring in Matt Stafford just for the sure thing. He could really focus on the defense now. Peyton, not married to him. 2nd round pick, not married to him. So anything you can get out of him. And Drew Lock's not a bust. I hate this topic where Drew Lock's a bust, blah, blah, blah. The 42nd overall pick, he's way outperformed what a typical 2nd round quarterback is. Most of those guys bust. They're mostly the Christian Hackenbergs, the Brett Hundleys of the world, the Deshaun Kaisers. Drew Lock, you're getting great return on investment for him overall, to be completely honest. But is that good enough? From what we've seen right now, I would say no. And if you want to roll with him again next year, that's fine. But you just have to prepare yourself and set yourself up to move on when the time comes.
Larry Vaughn, appreciate your patience, my friend. Longtime listener, longtime superstar. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, I think since Pat Shurmur is coming back, just give another year to Locke. No need to change quarterback and not offensive coordinator. Just bring in a guy that can step in when needed. And for me, this is pretty much, Larry, you and I are sharing a brain. I'm much more inclined to, instead of selling out, trying to get a quarterback in the draft or giving up the farm for a Stafford or a Watson, I'm much more inclined to give Locke one last year, banking on the back-to-back years with the same system, and just running on at least a modest assumption that year 3 he'll take a step forward. How big that step is, we don't know. And use that capital that you would give up to acquire a Stafford or a Watson or to move up in the draft to fill some holes. And if Drew bombs, you've got Andy Dalton or you've got Fitzpatrick that you can at least put them in the game, and they can keep you afloat, keep you respectable in 2021, knowing that it's a complete reset. Because if Drew were to bomb in 2021, if they do run it back with Drew and he bombs in 2021, odds are the team is going to bomb in 2021. And that means Vic's gone too. You start over completely at coach and quarterback in 2022. That's where I'm leaning, but I can't just, Nick, George Payton stood up there and said, look, you want to be a part of every deal. Doesn't mean that you make every deal, but you want to be a part of it. All the smoke that's there, it really does feel like the Broncos, George Payton is looking to not just bolster the quarterback position, like he's looking to upgrade. And by the way, we're sitting here at 56 minutes, so we got to rapid fire these remaining supers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the Broncos being involved in all these rumors right now, read between the lines, folks. The team is not sold on Drew Lock. And I know that it's very good PR. And if you want to be that fan that's live or die by your guy, by all means. I mean, that's your prerogative. But team is looking to upgrade right now. So I would say that if you have any semblance of reading between the lines, they are not sold on Drew Lock.
George Vandermark, longtime listener, bona fide superstar. Good to see you, my friend. He says, next year, this time, nobody will be talking or wanting Lock to get traded. 2021 will be a great year for Drew Lock. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Love the optimism. Deshaun jumping back in again. Thank you, my friend. We'll swing it back to draft and Nick's realm of expertise here. If Micah Parsons, the Penn State linebacker, or Caleb Farley, the Virginia Tech cornerback, are on the board, we're talking pick 9, who would you think we'd pick first and why? Nick, your answer.
Micah Parsons has a lot of red flags from his maturity to some sexual assaults and assault cases dating back to Penn State. He also plays a devalued position of linebacker. You can find linebackers day 2 every year, and they can be meaningful contributors. I mean, look what Vic Fangio did this year with Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson. You don't need an absolute stud at linebacker. And look across the league. A lot of the great defenses have nobodies at linebacker. I mean, just is what it is. It's a devalued position. I would call it the running back of the defense, that kind of position. So I would take Caleb Farley. I know there are questions there, but having a cornerback, especially in the AFC West, you need 4 good cornerbacks. Broncos right now maybe have 1.5. So I'm leaning Farley.
I share a brain on that completely. Zach and I answered a similar question last week. I think Zach's still leaning towards Parsons, but I'm all about Farley there in that particular scenario. Tyler Randall, thank you for that super chat, my friend. Really appreciate you. Make sure you connect with us on Twitter so we can shout you out after this show and keep the conversation going. Tyler says, finally getting a chance to catch the pod live. Phenomenal work from everyone. Had to become a Facebook supporter too because of it. Love the debates. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Hey, dude, mile high salute to you, Tyler. Thanks, really appreciate that, my friend. Really means a lot to us. And welcome and thank you, my dog. So make sure you're there tomorrow at noon for Kelberman's Corner episode 4. Our friend Jeremy, a.k.a. Black Knight 232, bona fide superstar. He says, Aaron Rodgers, come on down. You're the next starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. Like that's ever going to happen. Nick, what have you heard? I know you do a much better job keeping tabs on NFL rumors at large and whatnot. What have you heard on the Aaron Rodgers front, and what have you heard on the Jared Goff front?
Jared Goff, I think, will be available. I think that Sean McVay's had his third eye opened when it comes to the quarterback position, and he says, you know what? I can't have a quarterback that everything needs to be perfect for them to succeed. I can't have a guy who, as soon as there's pressure, he loses his damn mind. I can't have a guy who's completely pocket dependent. I need a little bit of mobility and playmaking there. So Jared Goff, I think, will become available. Aaron Rodgers, though, I don't think he's going to be available. I know there were some rumors after the game, high emotion, obviously losing a very close game. Am I going to retire? Aaron Rodgers, he's a nihilistic son of a gun in general. So I'm not reading anything into Aaron Rodgers. Maybe 2021, Aaron Rodgers might become available, but 2020, I don't think that's possible. Or excuse me, it is 2021. This season, he's not going to be available. The next one.
John, Chills Wills, if you've got that one, and while we're grabbing David here. David, one of our favorite YouTube profile pics, rocking the hat, rocking the face mask. Much love to you, my friend. Appreciate you and everything you do for all the MHH podcasts. Love you, buddy. He says,
thanks, David.
I wanted to ask you guys this question for a while. At the end of the Green Bay playoff game, Rodgers said he didn't know what the future holds. Do you think he'll retire? Do the Broncos have a chance? So we touched on, do the Broncos have a chance? But what about the issue of retiring? I really don't see Aaron. I mean, it's kind of weird to think after getting to his first NFC title game in 2010, in which he won, got to the Super Bowl, won this Super Bowl. He's now, since then, been to 4 NFC title games and has lost them all. Considering that they drafted his, ostensibly his future replacement a couple years ago, you see any merit to him potentially hanging up his cleats? Because I don't.
No, not yet. I do think that Aaron Rodgers has interests outside of football, and at some point he will get there. But he's going to win the MVP. He's a great quarterback still. He's going to be in his 3rd year in the system. He had weapons that stood up despite having a terrible draft this past year. As far as the impact for 2020, it was much more of a future draft for the Packers this past year. Jordan Love took a fullback in the 3rd round. What the heck are they even doing? But still, I think Rodgers 3-4 more good years left. He's playing great. It was just heat of the moment. He was very emotional after that loss, rightfully so. Calling that penalty after not calling it all game, I'd be upset too. But it is what it is. I think Rodgers will be back in Green Bay for the next couple seasons. But I think a lot of it also comes down to this Deshaun Watson stuff. I think the game's changing a little bit. I think these elite quarterbacks are maybe going to get a little bit more a piece of the pie as far as direction and power in these decisions. And maybe Aaron Rodgers will put his manscape on the table, if you will, and say, you know what, you need to use a 1st-round pick on a wide receiver this year. I mean, what are you even talking about? Brought to you by Crop Mop. He's going to pull out his Crop Mop. It's an interesting question, but I think Rodgers will be back in Green Bay this year.
Oh man, thank you for that. Chill Wills, appreciate you, my friend. That yours is a name that I don't recognize on Super Chat. So welcome, thank you. Connect with us on Twitter, my friend. We want to shout you out after the show. His question: what do you think about AJ McCarron? I thought he played well against us a few years ago. Let me remind you, though, Chill Wills, that was 2016? No, 2015.
Yeah.
That was the game that the Broncos clinched their playoff berth. He was starting for the Bengals on the road in Denver. Your thoughts on AJ McCarron? I don't even know where he's been the last year. What's up with AJ?
I don't even know what team he's on, but this is such a quarterback-starved league, and there's going to be a lot of teams moving this year. I think if AJ McCarron was worth his salt, he would have landed somewhere and probably done something by now, and that just hasn't been the case. If they want to bring him in, I guess that's fine. It's probably not even the level of quarterback you want to bring in to push Drew Lock. But again, it probably had something better than Jeff Driscoll and Brett Rippon. So it's something to look into, but I would not be super enthused about it.
McCarron, for what it's worth, I just checked. Houston Texans backup 2019 through the present, FYI. So, Martin, appreciate you, my friend. Good to see you. Thank you for the super. He says, how high is Lock's potential for success for today's NFL if he's not a dual threat quarterback or a great scrambler, nor could he become either, it seems. So I've already kind of thrown out my, rough sketch of a ceiling. What do you view as Drew Lock's ceiling in the league?
I think Drew Lock has the arm talent and athleticism where he could be a top 10 quarterback, but Jamarcus Russell had the best arm coming out of that draft and busted. So there is some point where it comes down to between the ears for the quarterback position, as well as the technique and the accuracy. And we haven't seen that from Drew Lock through his time at Missouri, as well as 2 years in Denver, not to the point where you'd want. So what is his upside? I do think he has, the tools and the athleticism to be a top 10 quarterback. Probably more realistically, you're talking about a guy who would shuffle in year out between the 15th best quarterback to the 25th best quarterback. That's probably where he lands, given the stats he's put out to date and the inconsistencies he's shown. And it's not like Drew Lock is this super raw quarterback. Everybody kind of points to Trey Lance, who's had this 1 year of tape. Drew Lock's played a lot of snaps, folks. A lot of snaps in college, sophomore, junior, senior year. Obviously, has been injured in Denver, but it's not like he's new to football or the quarterback position. So how much more can he get there given how much experience he has so far? I mean, we don't know. But I would push back a little bit. I do think that Drew Lock is, while he's not, Lamar Jackson out there running around, he's a good athlete. He's a pretty good athlete. He's definitely athletic enough to make a guy miss and create in space and pick up yards when the defense lets him get it. So it's not like a guy who I will push against in this draft cycle, and I'll continue to do so. Mac Jones, who is, Kyle Orton as far as athleticism goes. Drew Lock has some athleticism.
Yep. All right, we got 2 more super chats, and then we got to say goodnight for today. Good night for today. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Kenneth, love you, bro. Appreciate you. We should use Andy Reid's Alex Smith game plan, Nick.
There's a saying, it's kind of cliche, but they say it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. And even though the Alex Smith game plan was the Alex Smith game plan, he had Travis Kelce. He had Tyreek Hill. He was able to create mismatches in space, playing those 2 guys off each other. They just fit together so well. So the Alex Smith game plan, it's great. You need a quarterback who can extend plays with the legs, protect the football, keep the defense and the offense chugging along in good positions, not putting the defense in bad spots. That's great. I don't know if it's good enough in the AFC West, given the absolute firepower this team has. And it's not just the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs are the gold standard, but the offensive output from the Chargers, the Raiders, you're talking about a team that if the Broncos aren't putting up 24, 27 points a game, they're in trouble. So it's just the life in the AFC West going forward.
All right, last one from Dank Buds and Black Metal. Good to see you. By the way, if you're on Twitter, connect, because every time you super chat, I try to see if there's a Twitter account matching your handle, and I can never find one. So if you're on Twitter, reach out, connect, let me know who you are. We'd love to be able to shout you out, my friend. He says, hey, boys, just wondering about Marcus Mariota or even Tyrod Taylor. Possible? Nick, your thoughts?
I would be interested in Mariota if he was going to be a free agent, but he's still under contract for the Raiders. So you're probably not dealing in sending the Raiders draft capital to get him. If for some reason the Raiders, it's a weird year with the cap being going to be 20 to 30 million less than teams had thought pre-pandemic. So maybe Mariota finds himself on the market as a cut. Then maybe I'd be interested. Also, Tyrod, if the Broncos are interested in adding either a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, I would be all about bringing Tyrod in. I think that is a very good stopgap quarterback where you can give yourself 6-8 weeks and, could be really good from there. Also, Tyrod has been did you ever see the movie Good Luck, Chuck?
Oh, yeah.
Where he would, date the girl and then right afterwards she'd meet her.
She'd find her soulmate.
Exactly. Tyrod Taylor, quarterback for the Bills. They end up getting Josh Allen. Tyrod Taylor, quarterback for the Browns. They end up getting Baker Mayfield. Tyrod Taylor, quarterback for the Chargers. They end up I'm just saying Mike Glennon has something too, where every single year, whatever team he's been on has ended up with the first overall pick. So, if we want to do that, then, that's playing big brain, 3D chess going on. Yep.
All right, guys, as you can see here from the graphics, we sure would appreciate it if you smash that like button. Really helps us out more than you know. A quick shout out to Dylan, who has been helping out last couple of nights as a mod on YouTube. Thank you, Dylan, longtime member of our community. So appreciate your help, my friend, and appreciate you accepting, by the way. Before we dip on out of here, a couple quick matters of housekeeping here. Reminder to connect with the Mile High Insiders podcast on Twitter, as you can see on screen, at MHI_football_pod. The main account at Mile High Huddle. All right, go get your 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com, but use that code HUDDLE or else you don't get the 20% off and free shipping. Also, check out the merch store, huddleuppod.com. Get your swag on. Tomorrow, noon on Sunday, episode 4 of Kelberman's Corner. For our official Facebook supporters, you want in on that, go to the Mile High Huddle page, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click the big blue button. You're in like Flynn. And that's it. Now, Nick, I probably just screwed up your ritual for how we get on out of here. But, hey, again, thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me on. It was great. I always have a good time hearing your thoughts on all these topics, and any chance to engage with the community for me is not something I pass up on. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. You sign us out of here. You do your thing.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, want to reiterate, follow us on Twitter. You can find me at Nick Kendell, MHH. You can find Chad at Chad and Jensen. Also, follow Buona Beast, John at John K, MHH. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe, and share. Go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Like I've been doing on the shows on Tuesday. If you guys put a comment in there, I will send it to Buona Beast and we will read it live on the air. That's a great way to help us as well. Also, obviously, like, subscribe, and share on YouTube is probably the number one, as well as liking us on Facebook. Everyone stay safe. Obviously, it's really crazy stuff going on out there right now. And, whether it be the stock market or whatever the heck's going on in the world. 2021 has been off to a crazy start as well, but it's great to have some normalcy coming on here. Chad, thanks for having me as well. I know it's always kind of a hit or miss with the chemistry when you kind of switch up things, but I'm always down to switch up hosts and whatnot as well, because you never know. And also it's good. It's a good way to get ourselves out of our own echo chambers. It's always important to see different ideas. Appreciate all you guys in the chat. Stay safe, be positive, test negative, and we'll see you next time. Go Broncos. And also, Crispy, thank you for the super sticker here. We see you. We appreciate you. Love you all, guys. Go Broncos.